Hello and welcome to another review. This one is for the new Storm Absolute. Angel and I are in this one, so righty and a lefty, we're on a challenge pattern and we go through several different surfaces, so you'll want to stick around because as always, this will be the best review you'll see or your money back. The Absolute features the new to us R2S Deep Hybrid. It was previously used on the international/overseas ball, the Starlock, and according to the design intent that you can find on the balls page at stormbowling.com, lots of interesting extra information to check out on the ball pages, by the way, that link's in the description. R2S Deep is a cleaner and sharper version of R2S. R2S is, of course, their flagship cover stock that we've seen on all kinds of things. R2S Hybrid specifically was on the IQ Tour Fusion, the Code Red, and most recently, or I guess just continuously, on the original High Road for reference. The Absolute comes with the new React-A-Gloss surface, which Angel's ball is obviously not still at, more on that in a moment. It also features the new Sentinel core at a 248 RG, 050 differential, and an 021 intermediate differential and 15 pounds. And what's interesting about this one is that there's no puck or block on the bottom of the core, commonly referred to as a flip block, to make the ball shape more or be more dynamic. However, the flip block can also make the ball too jerky or straight off the end of the pattern, so if you've ever had an asymmetric ball jerk and stop on you, part of that might be the flip block creating too much shape. The idea with just the single density / simpler core is to still give you the asymmetric torque while making the shape more continuous and less jerky. You'll also notice that due to the core's shape, when drilling the thumb for most typical layouts, it'll miss hitting the core, which helps to maintain the undrilled core specs because you're not altering the shape as much by drilling into it. Starting with Angel first, we've decided to make Kegel Chromium our testing pattern going forward. The problem with filming on a house shot is that despite it being what most people will bowl on, they tend to make everything look the same, so it's very hard to see the ball-to-ball differences. Now on the flip side, filming on our tough sport pattern tends to make everything look worse than it actually is, and some balls just aren't designed for use on the fresh on a heavier volume sport pattern. So filming on a house shot seems kind of pointless, and filming on a sport pattern seems kind of unfair at times, so Kegel Chromium at 42 feet, 25.5 mils, and a close to 7:1 ratio seem like the perfect pattern. High side of medium length and volume, and while the ratio keeps you honest, it's not unfair and is quite playable if you make decent shots. First off, we've already determined after going a few rounds with React-A-Gloss on other balls that it's just not for us, so while I'll still at least start with a box surface later to take a quick look, Angel has opted to go straight to using React-A-Scuff on the balls before drilling. This takes them to a 3000-ish grit sheen that breaks the polish without getting the surface too dull. With React-A-Gloss, the balls tend to start off very jerky and inconsistent out of the box, then after a few shots, the cover gets slick and almost slimy like a house ball. Very hard to get clean, even though we do wipe everything off thoroughly with a Premier Chamois in between shots, and this causes the ball to begin to skate and deflect. At first, we didn't think the React-A-Scuff got deep enough. Like I mentioned in the Revenant review, the old polish finish, or the 1500 grit polish that they used to use was 500, 1000, step 2, and that's a much lower grit compound. The React-A-Gloss finish process is 500, 2000, 4000 gloss, so it's a much finer, smoother surface before then using a much higher grit polish. So the overall surface with the React-A-Gloss ends up much smoother than it used to be. React-A-Scuff used to be great for knocking the shine down with the old polish, but it's hit or miss on working on the gloss balls. Worked on the Fate, didn't work on the Revenant, and is average on the Absolute. However, while seeming weakish at first, Angel's Absolute began to quote-unquote wake up somewhat as we got it broken in. It's kind of a unique look. It's definitely clean and responsive, very archy, and while it looks like it would be kind of a hook set ball that's going to be more forward, it does pick up and continue well. With regular R2S already being clean enough, we were both worried about an even cleaner version, but it seems to still have a solid amount of traction. Clean in bowling lingo basically means easy down the lane. Something that's clean is usually pretty sharp, and that's great when they're drier, but if you get something that's too clean, that can make it inconsistent and sensitive. Not quite strong enough in the oil, a little too strong on the dry. The Absolute looks mostly good for her, but the cover still wanted to get a little slick and resisted angle. She was keeping it pretty close to the pocket, and when she opened up her angles a little, it was still making it back, but you can see it laboring and being too lazy and flat on occasion. When it's good, it's definitely really good. It's akin to something like an astrophysics, strong core with a medium strength cover that gives you a strong roll, fast revving, lots of torque, but with a cover that's at a more commonly usable strength, which makes it a great look for league or as a step down from a stronger asymmetric ball. The Absolute falls in a similar zone as the RSTX2 and Rubicon UC2 as well. It's too big of a step down from something like a Reality, Supernova, or Gem, but that makes it a great step down from something like an Infinite Physics, Dark Code, or Reality Check. While the ball reaction generally improved from where it started, we both felt it could be better and looked like it could or should be more versatile or capable, so we decided to fully resurface it and do some more filming, so we'll take a look at that now. Like we also did with the Revenant, I took it down to 1000 with Jayhawk Bowling Supply's Diamond Dust pads and then finished it with React to Scuff. This results in a surface that's rougher overall than it was to begin with, because rather than coming down from the finer polished surface, we're going up from 1000, so a bit more strength to help with traction and stability, but the bigger goal was to hopefully open the pores of the ball up so it would absorb some oil and get rid of the slick or slimy feel, so it'd pick up and drive and be more consistent instead of kind of walking up or slowly or lazily easing or backing up into the pocket. We made sure to even get the same lane, again, for consistency's sake, and the difference is obviously significant. Even as the ball lane shined during filming, it never got slick or slimy again and continued to react and perform well. She had to move a handful of boards deeper because it's obviously stronger than before, that's not a surprise, but like I said, it continued to pull up and move. Now it's picking up and driving with authority while still being controllable and continuous. It might seem like a small adjustment, but where the previous surface kind of locked her into a specific zone and could labor down lane, now she can move around. She has more forgiveness and room to the right and can make firmer and more confident shots, so she doesn't have to baby it or help it anymore. However, like I touched on in the Revenant review, with this said, React-to-Gloss might be great for you if you bowl on higher friction lanes or drier conditions, so just because it doesn't work for us doesn't mean it won't work for you. However, again, if you happen to have the same issues that we are, this is how to adjust. Thousands of people buy every release, and it's normal for some to not get along with something or not match up to it, but there's so many adjustments you can make that it'd be dumb to spend a couple $100 on a ball and bail on it because it's not perfect out of the box. Even when it's just average or mediocre, like this ball was for Angel to begin with, you can still dial it in and make it better. It showed plenty of promise to begin with, but just wasn't quite there, so we took another step, and now it's incredible. Box surface is just a suggestion. There's no way that they can make every ball work for every bowler on every condition, and if you're one of these I shouldn't have to change anything or I don't like changing the box surface people, you're just going to waste a lot of money and be miserable. She's obviously a lot happier now. She liked it to begin with, but was hoping to like it more because we go through so many balls that if something isn't elite, it's just not going to get thrown. She probably wouldn't have thrown it much before, but now it's going to see a lot of action, and all it took was a little surface adjustment. At first we thought it was absolutely mediocre, but now it's an absolute unit. Definitely on par with something like an Astrophysics, and while I think it's longer and a touch weaker than the Code Red, this is definitely the nearest replacement we've had for that ball yet. It wants to be somewhat strong and fairly angular, maybe defined is a better description, but it's also pretty forgiving and versatile. As far as comparing it to something in the current lineup, the Nova is realistically its only real competition, or the only thing on paper that at least it competes with or could overlap. The UC2 has been discontinued, the RSTX2 is now also gone, and everything else in a similar space like the Infinite, Reality Check, Exotic Gem, Dark Code, those have much stronger cover formulas. I'll actually compare the Infinite later in the video. The Nova is R2X hybrid, stronger than R2S Deep, but not substantially, definitely within the same zone or window. The ignition core is quite similar on paper too, 249RG, 052 differential, and an 019 split or intermediate differential, so the numbers nearly line up. While the Nova is of a similar strength, the shape is quite a bit different. The Nova is earlier, more tumbly, and while it's firm down lane, it more picks up and settles into the pocket. It likes straighter angles, creates a lot of control, and manages the lane extremely well. The Absolute is a bit more energetic. It picks up and almost accelerates. It's a visibly cleaner and more defined look. You know when it's skidding and you know when it's moving. The Nova is more gradual, or more patient, I guess you could say. It kind of walks out and then eases up into the pocket. I think it's fairly obvious that this would be the choice from straighter angles, and then as you move deeper and want to stay in a similar strength ball that handles angle better, the Absolute would be the pick at that point. Flipping sides, I started with the box surface because I wanted to at least give it a look. This is how most people are going to experience it out of the box, so I at least wanted to kind of show that off. For the first several shots, pretty long and quick, almost too quick at first, but this is from a straighter zone too, and as we saw with Angel, it does like to bend a little or cover some boards. My speed is a bit higher than hers, and clean covers with shine aren't the greatest idea on the left side most of the time, especially on something that's not a house shot, but again, it doesn't look bad at all. It actually reminds me quite a bit of the Insight. The cover's much weaker and the core's a little stronger, but the general reaction and look on the lane is very similar. It's a bit more directional for me than it is for Angel, or it doesn't necessarily want to be super naturally continuous at least, which isn't a bad thing. It lets me get around it without it going bonkers, which is what I'm doing right now, and it allows me some utility in controlling the shape. I personally favor more naturally continuous shapes, but I have a few balls that shape like this that I still like and use, so this is more of an observation than a knock on the ball. I can obviously get it to pick up and drive without any difficulty, and it's nice to not have to bail on something or dump it to keep it from jumping down lane. A ball being more forward or directional isn't the same thing as a ball rolling out. This is what rolling out looks like. About the time I went to move inside, the cover started getting slimy, and despite a lot of scrubbing with my Premier Chamois, I still couldn't get it dry, and it wasn't absorbing anything, so it'd get to the spot and start to labor. So same story for me as it was for Angel at first. If I kept it closer to the pocket, it looked okay, and while I expected it to hook more than this, I was expecting it to also resist the angle just due to the cleaner cover and shine. Anything with this strength of a cover, asymmetric or not, and slimy cover or not, starts to get long and wiggly from these kinds of angles on the left, so this isn't really surprising, and I can't exactly knock the ball for it. It was still fighting to hang in there, but I wasn't loving the look, so I went ahead and hit it with a 3000 pad to break the shine. After doing that, it woke up and got nice for about 3 shots, and then it started to slick back up, and it's a pretty obvious difference. You can see it start to get lazy before the surface, and then I add the surface, it looks like it gets a hit of adrenaline, it gets really impressive, then you can see it start giving up again after that. And now it's rare that anything gives me the shim on the left, so I thought I'd just go on ahead and take what it was giving me. You may have been scratching your head when I was talking about it being more directional earlier. It was being quite continuous because I was really getting around it, but after adding the angle and as it starts to not quite get the traction to pick up, you should be able to see what I mean now. After seeing that this angle wasn't an option, I just moved back to the left and started throwing darts. Remember, I had to do this with the Fate too, and I don't go anywhere without that ball now. After I got 15 to 20 games on the Fate, the cover settled in, broke in, and now it's a monster. With the Absolute, I've got better looks that I don't have to fight with like this, and while the Fate stuck around because I saw the potential and because it was a unique look in my bag, I'm on the fence about giving this one more time because, like I said, I've got some other stuff that's fairly similar. However, I decided to resurface mine too and see what that would do. On to the 1000 grit Diamond Dust pads, but I finished mine with step 2 instead of React-A-Scuff. Now, instantly crush. I mean, look at the quality of the ball reaction now. Not as long and jerky as out of the box, closer to the 3000 by hand that I took it to, but without sliming up or getting wiggly. Like Angels, you can see the increase in stability and authority in the reaction. Instead of picking up and working its way up the hill, it's driving firmly. Now, it still did lose the tack after a few shots. It was bordering on slick, but obviously it wasn't enough this time to affect the ball reaction. A rounder shape, it's a little more continuous than it was the first time around. Now, the cover is still very clean, and it's still the left side, so that means it's occasionally going to go long and get behind the head pin a bit, but I just simply have to get around it a bit more, and it picks right up and chases the 10 off the deck. As I move deeper, it still doesn't necessarily have the dig or overall strength to naturally want to hook a bunch, at least not on the fresh condition. Not that I ever see transition, but if I were at a center with more friction, at league on a drier pattern, or just simply didn't move inside for absolutely no reason when I was crushing it from straighter, it's just fine. However, to compare it to the reaction earlier, even when I was slowing it down, getting around it more and rolling it more, it just wasn't responding. It was still pushing, wiggling, just not seeing it, not picking up, and doing anything. When doing those same things now, it's giving me more to work with. It's actually moving, it's pulling up, finishing, and continuing. I think it's obvious this isn't the play. If I was in a scoring situation, I'd just move back to the left and square up a little, but this does really illustrate the difference the surface change makes. It was just too lazy earlier for me to even force it to work, but when I roll it really nicely here on the last shot, it looks just as impressive as it did from straighter, despite not being in the right part of the lane. I'm going to compare it to the Infinite physics because while the core strengths are similar, the Infinite has a much stronger cover formula, and also because I just love showing why you can't look at them as hybrid asim and Pearl asim. Most people will say, oh, the Infinite's a Pearl, so the Absolute will be stronger because it's a hybrid. Obviously, that's not the case whatsoever. I couldn't even start from the straighter zone with the Infinite because it wouldn't get down the lane. I had to start in the second zone, and even then it was still making me keep my speed up. The Infinite is a rounder shape, perhaps even a bit smoother than the Absolute, definitely earlier and stronger, and a perfect illustration, once again, of why you should move on from the Pearl hybrid solid stuff and pay more attention to the cover stock formula instead. The Infinite is one of the better and more versatile balls in the catalog right now. It was second in my Ball of the Year vote, and while you do obviously need some oil for it, it's very versatile from left to right. You can walk it down the side or hook the whole lane with it, throw a perfect shot and get Petersoned. You know, the whole nine. Hopefully you get 10 more often than not, but the Absolute looks like an absolutely perfect step down from the Infinite, which is a perfect step down from the bigger stuff like a Gem or Reality. The Absolute releases with the Revenant on January 20th. Look for that review as well. I'll also have plenty of comparisons coming soon, most notably to the UFO Alert. There are some similarities, and it could possibly be a replacement, so we're going to take a look. Remember my Bowler's Mart link in the description below to get one of these pre-ordered. Rosdahl 10 gets you 10% off at checkout at CoolWick.com. Check out my YouTube memberships for plenty of early access and exclusive content. Thanks to my outstanding members. Thank you for watching, and may the strikes be with you.